absolutely night and day. And Peter Wynn, the guy that is their punt returner, he's a guy that I want to say he leads maybe the Montana program in return yards and in their history. He's a very good return man, and you can tell people were running laps this week after East Carolina. So it was good to see the improvement.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of that improvement, at least on the kickoff side, was that we were kicking it into the end zone. We weren't trying to kick it short and try to make them return it. We were purposely kicking it into the end zone, purposely getting the ball out to the 25, which I think was huge, and I kind of wish we would have done that against ECU, because not only does it make the other team the other player have to think, okay, should I return this or not? But it also guarantees that they're only going to be at the 25. That's the absolute farthest they can go. Or if they do take it out, they're already farther back, so they're getting out to the 25 is going to be a lot harder. So I like that style of kickoffs more so than, like I said, at ECU, where we were kicking it short. Or we kicked it short that one time and he took it to the house. But yeah, and so that's the special teams were, like you said, night and day. They were much better this week, and hopefully Coach Ivy has them running those laps, like you said, to make sure that it continues to be on a much higher degree of play on the special teams. And one thing that I want to talk about real quick on things we need to improve on, which we kind of did, was the missed tackles. I mean, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that we will have to see coming up against the Citadel. Them running the triple option, and I mean, the triple option is based on deception and misdirection. And so if we miss one tackle, that guy might be the only one that's around the ball at that time, just because of the misdirection. So we can't afford to miss tackles coming up this week. So kind of segueing here, how do you think ASU's offense matches up this week against the Citadel defense?
Well, it's going to be hard to tell, because in terms of the 2012 season, we don't have a ton to go on with them. They played their first game. They only gave up 14 points, but it was against Charleston Southern, who's not a very strong team. And so it's hard to really gauge too much. They did a great job in that game. They didn't they didn't allow a lot of yards. They obviously only allowed 14 points. It was a 49-14 blowout win, and so it's hard to take too much from that, because it was inferior competition. And then last week, they didn't have a great performance against Georgia Southern. Honestly, they allowed Georgia Southern to rush for 307 yards. But that's another one where it's kind of hard to really, it's not a very good point of comparison, because Georgia Southern is a triple option offense. It's a completely different scheme. How they defend that versus how they would defend a more traditional, I suppose, offense like Appalachian runs, where it's going to be a little more balance between pass and run. It's really hard to it's really hard to gauge. I do think that I do think that Jamal Jackson is going to have another good game. The first start of his career was last year down in Charleston. He had 234 yards, 3 touchdowns. We put up 49 points on him. So he's had success against them in the past. And then on the kind of the other facet of our offense is going to be how we're able to move the ball on the ground. I think that is going to be the biggest question. With an offensive line that I think is improving, but is still young, still getting better, still a bit of a work in progress. How we're able to move the ball on the ground is going to be the key. I really, although obviously as an Appalachian fan, I'm a little bit biased. I truly believe that we will probably not run into a team this year that's going to be able to shut down our passing. I mean, we might run into one that'll keep it in check a little bit or be able to force some turnovers. But I really don't think that, with the performance Jamal Jackson had last week and the fact that he opened up the year with a 300-yard passing game against East Carolina, I just really don't think we're going to see a team that's going to be able to slow us down too much through the air. The bigger concern is a team forcing us to be one-dimensional. And if we're if we're not able to consistently move the ball on the ground against the Citadel, that is a concern. Now, one thing that is a positive. Miller had the best game of his career last year against the Citadel down in Charleston. He had 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he had a great game against them last year. There's a little bit of familiarity there. I'm sure he probably is looking forward to this game after those huge defensive front of Montana. You know, they're not nearly as big as Montana. They are quick, and being that they are a triple option team and face the triple option and practice every day, they are accustomed to stopping the run. And I think that's going to be the key, how well they're able to stop us on the ground. Stephen Miller lit them up last year, and if he's able to have, any performance that's even close to, what he was able to do last year, with the firepower we have in the passing game, I like our chances to put up, 30 plus points on them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you 100% on that. We're gonna be hard pressed to find a defense that's gonna stop our passing game, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where, I mean, we have 2 freshmen that are putting up great numbers already, and then of course Washington and Peacock still, and then Jamal Jackson, who's looked great. And then you also have Sims Mickelfresh, who's looked really good in the limited time he's had. So, I mean, our wide receivers, they're just so young and so talented. You can't, like I said earlier, you cannot double team one player, because Jamal Jackson seems to be, at least so far, he's showed that he's smart enough to, if it's double team, go to somebody else. And he has that confidence in our receiving core, which is huge, that he knows that he can go somewhere else, and the ball's still going to get caught and for positive yards. So that's huge. And Stephen Miller, I think he will have a good game this week. But honestly, I think we'll see more of Michael Frazier this week, just because we're going to need more of that big man running up the middle against a Citadel team who, like you said, is used to facing the triple option offense. So we try to run Stephen Miller up the middle. I think he's just going to get absolutely creamed, just because he's small. He's a scat back. He needs to be running to the outside, screen passes. I mean, he did a great job for us against Montana, but Montana is. I mean, I think that Montana is statistically they're bigger. They measure bigger than Citadel, but Citadel's defense is used to packing in the middle for the triple option. So I think we're going to see a lot of Michael Frazier, but I think the key is actually going to be to score quick and score often on Citadel. That's going to be the key to limit the triple option, just because the triple option is mainly used to run down the clock. So you score quick and score often and limit their scores, obviously. They're going to have to start airing it out, and they don't want to do that. They want to keep the ball on the ground as much as they possibly can, just because that's what their offense does. So kind of going on that same direction, how do you think our defense is going to look against the Citadel's triple option?
Well, it's it's going to be very interesting, because it's similar to the other side of the ball. We don't have a lot in terms of what they've done in 2012 really to go on that is necessarily going to be a good point of comparison for how our defense might stack up, because in week 1 they played Charleston Southern. They rushed for over 400 yards. They put up over 500 yards of offense, put up 49 points, but. Again, and not to rag on Charleston Southern, but the quality of players they have there versus the quality of players we have here is a pretty stark contrast. And so the fact that they put up those big numbers on them doesn't necessarily concern me. Defense, and then last week, even though they won, it was a great win against Georgia Southern. They really won that game on the strength of a really clutch performance from their kicker. Who made the game-winning field goal and was 3 for 3 for the game. But they did not really have a great offensive performance against Georgia Southern. They only had 253 yards of total offense, 168 rushing yards, which, for a team like us that will pass the ball a good bit, 168 rushing yards, we'll take that every day. But for a triple option offense, that's pretty low. Mm-hmm. So that they didn't have a great offensive day against Georgia Southern. Like I said, great performance from their special teams. It was helped by the fact that Georgia Southern fumbled the ball 5 times. Really helped them to win that game. Georgia Southern missed a couple of field goals as well. It's one of those things where you have to take them seriously. Georgia Southern is a great team. They did what they had to do to win, but they didn't exactly march the ball up and down the field on Georgia Southern. Now, that being said, I don't necessarily think that because Georgia Southern held them down that much that we will necessarily do the same, because Georgia Southern is also a triple option team. Their defense is used to seeing that in practice every day. And, frankly, they're used to seeing that offense at a faster speed than the Citadel runs it in practice every day. So their defense is much more prepared for that offense than we are, just with 1 week of preparation. I think the numbers will probably fall somewhere in between those two in terms of what they put up against Charleston Southern and what they put up against Georgia Southern. I do expect it to be a little more closer to the Georgia Southern side, because obviously if we let them come up, and rush for anywhere near 400 yards on us like they did in week 1, it's going to be it's going to be a struggle. I think we're going to see a little bit of both quarterbacks, just like we did last year. Ben Dupree is the starter, but Aaron Miller should also see some playing time, and I'm sure that most all App fans remember Aaron Miller. If you watched the game last year, he had 3 rushing touchdowns on us, including 2 in the fourth quarter. When they kind of made that furious comeback on us after being down 49-14. From a passing standpoint, you wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of that out of them. The Citadel has only attempted 15 passes on the season. Miller's thrown 11 of those 15. He's completed 7 of them for 107 yards. Dupree has only attempted 4 passes with 1 completion. That 1 completion did go for a 26-yard touchdown in the first quarter last week against Georgia Southern. But Dupree does lead the team in rushing yards. He's had 169 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And like you see with most triple option offenses, they're not. They really do. They have a lot of different guys that can beat you on the ground. I mean, we're only 2 games into the season. They've already got 3 guys that are over 100 yards rushing for the season. So, we're going to see a couple of guys out there. Darian Robinson, he's a guy that went for over 100 yards against us last year. We need to be ready for him. And as always, when you're playing a triple option offense, you just need to always be aware of that sneaky pass, because they'll run you, and then try to get you off balance and catch those corners cheating in to try to stop the run, and then that's when they'll burn you with a long touchdown pass. So we really need to. The secondary needs to stay on their toes, because you're not going to get a lot of opportunities, but when you do, they're probably going to be deep balls. So that's going to be one interesting thing to watch. And our defense, we've got a lot of youth. I think the biggest concern for us defensively is that obviously both of our defensive tackles are not very experienced. This will be their first significant action against the triple option offense at this level. So how they respond on the interior to the triple option is going to be worth watching, and maybe even more importantly is going to be how the secondary, that's also relatively inexperienced, is able to react, because the assumption is that after they're reinstated last week, that Jamil Lott's not going to be playing this week. So the most likely person to start at corner opposite Demetrius McCray is probably going to be Aaron Craw, and unless the coach decide to put somebody else in there, and he's a true freshman. This will be his first taste of the triple option offense, and it's just one of those things where, along with just the X's and O's, where we've got to play disciplined football. You have to stick with your man. You've got to do your job and not try to do anybody else's, because that's when they'll burn you for some big plays. But as you touched on earlier, getting the guy with the first tackler that gets to him, and not letting them break tackles, because when you're defending the triple option in such assignment football, you're not going to have quite the same amount of gang tackles that you'll have against a traditional offense, and a lot of it is one-on-one. And if their guy beats you one-on-one, then they could beat you for a big play. I love the speed of our defense. With Deuce Robinson on the edge, with Kimbrough and Greer there in the linebacking core, I think our speed should really allow us to contain the edges. If we're able to cut off the pitch man and keep him inside, I do like our chances. But it's just, as you kind of alluded to earlier, that offense runs a lot on kind of fooling you and misdirection and getting you going the wrong way. And with some of these inexperienced guys we're going to have out there, it doesn't take more than once or twice for you to bite on one of those fakes or bite on the misdirection for them to burn you for a big play. So it's a complete change of gears from what we've seen the first 2 weeks. And I do trust that between the experience we have with Greer,